What's up, YouTubers? In today's video I'm going to go ahead and update my firmware on my CR10. Right now I'm using firmware 1.1.4 and I'm going to go ahead and upgrade to 1.1.6. As you can see, I'm already at the Marlin website where we will download 1.6, and I will go over the release notes and the Marlin library. And then lastly, I will go over everything you need to change in the firmware for your CR10. Keep in mind that some of the numbers that I change might be different for your CR10 particularly, especially since I'm using a auto level system and there's many different mounts that you use. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go ahead like we already are. We're at the Marlin web page, and we're going to go ahead and hit download. As you can see, the latest version is 1.1.6. As it's downloading, we can go ahead and look at the release notes, and we can see everything that they changed within the firmware. Now I'm upgrading from 1.1.4 to 1.1.6, and so we can actually see all the way down here 1.14 and see the changes they made in 0.5 version and 0.6 version, all right here. I have been running version 1.16 now for a couple days, and I would have to say that my printer does run smoother. I haven't really noticed quality difference, but it does have a sound difference in the stepper motors, so I think it runs a little bit smoother. Alright, so this is Marlin's library, and this is very helpful. This will tell you what certain terms in the firmware means. For example, we can go to movement, acceleration, and here it will tell you all about acceleration and what it's defined as, and it even tells you about the jerk settings as well. And so it's just a really helpful tool if you have any questions on what anything means within the firmware. Alright, so now that we have it downloaded, we're going to go ahead and have it extracted. Alright, so once everything is extracted, open up Marlin, and we're going to go ahead and scroll down until we find that INO file, which is right here. We'll double click that, and here it is. Alright, so I went ahead and turned on the lines right here. If you don't know how to do that, you'll go ahead and hit File, Preferences, and you want to do display line numbers. Alright, as you can see, this is the Marlin file, and what we have to do now is customize it to our CR10. And where to start, we're going to go ahead and scroll down to line 114. 114 is the baud rate. Now the baud rate I'm going to set is 115200, and here, right here, motherboard. This is very important. We're not going to go ahead and put the Melzi board in this one, and I'll show you why. So we're going to go ahead and hit this line down here, and we're going to scroll down until we see boards. As you can see, it says the following: define, select which electronic board you have. Please choose the name from boards.h, what matches your setup. So basically we're going to go here to boards.h, and we can scroll down and see exactly what board we have, and then we're going to we can either put the number in, or we could just highlight this whole board, copy paste. But we're going to go ahead and look for our board, which I think I passed. Okay, so we have the Melzi board right here. On the other one, I think on the other versions you just put Melzi, but they actually, for this update, have a Melzi _ Creality. And so I'm just going to go ahead and copy this number, and then go back to the configuration.h file, and we're going to go ahead and paste right here. So we're just going to paste 89, and it will know that that's the Melzi for the Creality. Alright, on line 127, as you can see, we can put a custom name. And this name goes straight on the LCD right when you start up your 3D printer. and we could just name it whatever we want, 3D printer, or I don't know, you put whatever you want, your name in there, anything. So I'm gonna go ahead and do CR10 right there. So, and then I'll say CR10 and then ready. Alright, so next we're gonna go ahead and go to line 237, which is the thermal settings, and that's right here. Now keep in mind that we need to see what sensor we're using. We're using a 100K thermostat for the bed, because down here our bed has no thermostat when we actually have a 100K thermostat. So we're going to go ahead and change that to 5. Alright, so next right here, this is for our extruder. I print with polycarbonate, so I'm going to go ahead. I never really go above 300 degrees Celsius, so I'm going to set that to 300 degrees. All these are for other type of heaters. If you have multiple extruders, I only have one, so I'll just bother setting this one. Okay, so for our bed, I never go above 150, but I'll just set it to 120. Next, we're going to go ahead and go down to line 461. And that is end stop settings. So right here on the CR10, as you all know, for our XY, and if you have a stock Z, it's a little button that when it presses that button, that means it is fully to the left or fully to the fully pushed forward or anything like that. It's fully to the left of the X axis, and that means stop, don't go any further. Well, since I'm using a capacitive sensor, and I believe an inductive sensor is the same thing, you have to invert that logic, because if you don't, when you start doing your Z leveling, it's not going to move at all, because it's thinking that it's already touching the ground, so, or touching the bed. Alright, so we're gonna go ahead and set that one to true, and as well as the probe end stop, we're going to set that as true as well. Alright, so just right here, our movement settings, we're going to go ahead and change these up to the original settings for the CR10, which are 80, 80, 400, and 95 for default axis steps per unit. And for default max feed rate, we're going to go ahead and change that to 3000, 3000, and 100, and we will leave the 25 there. Right here, max acceleration, I'm just going to leave it the same. It doesn't really matter. Now, this might be different for you, but for my setup, I like to set up my default acceleration to 600 and everything else to 1000, just like this. And it may be different for you, but this is how I found for my setup I get the best quality. And I spent hours setting acceleration and jerk settings, and this is just best for me. Alright, so also I just kept jerk at 20. Our next area is 625, and right here we're going to go ahead and uncomment fixed mounted probe, and this is only if you have an auto level system. If not, just leave it alone. Alright, so next we're going to go ahead and move down to 664. Now, if you have a BL Touch, this is where you start adding in your BL Touch, but if you have, the stock board, you're not going to have a BL Touch. Alright, so here I have a probe on my CR10, and it's to the left at a certain amount, and you're gonna need to measure that amount that it's off by, and you're gonna need to measure both the X and Y axis it's off by. So for me, my probe's on the left side, so it's going to be a minus number, and it's a little bit forward than the actual extruder. And you're basically you're telling it when it does the auto level that, hey, my probe's right here, so when the extruder hits that point where the probe was, this is where you're leveling. That's what it's basically saying. So I already know my offsets, but you can go ahead and measure yours and figure it out. If you're using the same setup as I am, these should work. And so we're going to go ahead and set this up, and those are my offsets. And again, yours may be different, and if you have a previous program and you're upgrading, you should know your offsets. They should be the same. Alright, next, right here, probe travel speed, your X and Y travel speed. I went ahead and sped this up. I found no difference between 8,000 millimeters per minute to 12,000 or 120,000 or 12,000 meters per minute, and basically this is 120 meters per second. I found no difference between 80 meters per second or 80 millimeters per second to 120 millimeters per second. So I sped that up, but I also added a double touch, and it just gives it a more accurate probe on the bed. So basically it's going to hit once at kind of a faster speed, and then it's going to slow down and slowly do the second probe, and to get a more accurate reading of the bed. Again, if you have auto level, you will not be messing with any of this stuff. This should be 0, 0, but if you do have auto level, you're going to need to mess with all this stuff. So once we set probe double touch, and we're going to go ahead and scroll down. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and leave these false true, and then invert X direction, we're going to need that to be true. If we do not have that, it's going to go the opposite way we want it to go. And as well as the extruder stepper motor, we want true as well. Alright, so right here we're going to go ahead and input our bed size. And we're going to go ahead and right here for me, now this is just for me, unless you're using the same setup I'm using, the same mounts on I'm using an E3D, and my mount pushes it up 10 millimeters, so I need to put a -10 on it, so that way it is perfectly centered, and that's the offset of my actual extruder for that mount. If you're using the stock setup, that should be 0. Alright, so for the Z Max is next, we're at 400. Also, if you're using a CR10 S3 or a S4 or S5, you're going to have to change your numbers to your settings for that particular printer. Alright, so bed leveling. So here, if you don't have an auto bed leveling, you don't need this part of this video. But there are some more changes after bed leveling. So I'm going to go ahead and use the bilinear settings for auto leveling. So once we have auto bed uncommented, for bilinear, we're going to go ahead and scroll down to the bilinear section, which is right here. So mesh or bilinear or UBL leveling, and so right here. So this is where we're going to change next. Now on default it's set for 3 points, which means it'll go 3 up, 3 across, which will be 9 total points that it will actually hit the probe and level that area. My bed's pretty warped, so I've found that 5 points is the best, and that means it's going to probe the bed 25 times, and it gives you a much accurate reading of the bed. Alright, so here I already have my numbers for this. Basically this is right where you want the probe to touch, and you can't go past 300 millimeters, and because the program is set where the extruder cannot go past the bed, so your probes are kind of limited, and I'll show you when I actually do a bed level what I mean by that. But I'm going to go ahead for the left part. I want it 30 millimeters from the tip of the glass to the actual probe. And here, and this is, if I set this to 300, it's not going to work, because that means my extruder went past the glass, even though my probe's on the left side, and I should be able to probe that area with no problem. But the program won't allow me to go past 300 millimeters. It won't allow the extruder to go past 300 millimeters. So with my offset being minus 41, I will have to set this to 259 to get it to probe closest to the right. And here went ahead and set 40 and 260 here. Alright, so we have our probe settings and where the probe's going to go when we do G29 for auto level. If you don't have an auto level, then you don't have to worry about this. Alright, so we're going to have to define Z safe homing, especially we have a probe on the left side. If our probe's on the left side, that means our probe's going to be off the glass and the nozzle is going to go straight into the glass. And now go to line 1005 for additional features. I like to use EPROMs or however you want to say it. I use this a lot, so I'm going to go ahead and enable this. And basically this is so I can do settings from the LCD or from the control panel on the actual printer, and also I can save settings through the script, and also save settings through the communication bar. And so you want to have this enabled, so because how I do my Z offset, I do my Z offset through the actual printer, and then I just store the settings. I won't do it through the firmware because sometimes it changes over time. Okay, so we have our EPROMs settings enabled, and here for me this is your preheat settings, and this part is PLA, and this is any other settings, ABS or whatever. I set my PLA presets to 205, and my bed is on average I always print at on average I always print at 60 degrees Celsius. And for here I'm just gonna leave this, but I'm gonna change the bed settings to 80 degrees. Alright, let's go ahead and check for anything else. Alright, next is going to be in the LCD and SD support. And we do have an SD card, so on line 1232 we're going to go ahead and define SD support because we have an SD card reader on our printer. Okay. We're going to go ahead and uncomment the encoder pulse per step and the encoder step per menu item 5. That way we can do, I think it's baby stepping if I remember right. We do also on line 1298 we have a speaker, so we're going to go ahead and define speaker. And now I think it's 1384. Yep, so right here we're going to define our LCD screen. This is the type of LCD screen smart controller we're using, so we need to make sure that's enabled. And I think that may be it. Oh yeah, wait, one more thing. Okay, so next on line 1684 we're going to have to change our extruder diameter. Unless you are using 3mm, but majority of us are using 1.75, and everything else should be the same. Yeah, everything else should be the same, and that looks like to be it. So all this that we have made, all the changes that we made to the configuration.h file should be able to be used on our CR10. I'm going to go ahead and upload it, and I will do a test. I'll do a G28 homing test, a G29 auto leveling test, and then I'll do a print to test and make sure that it leveled okay. So to upload it, we're gonna have to make sure our CR10 is plugged into our computer. We're gonna go ahead and be selecting the I'm gonna mispronounce this, the Sanguino board, and we're gonna make sure we're gonna be on the Atmega 1284 or the Atmega 1284p at 16 megahertz processor, and make sure you're on your correct port. You may have a different port than I have, so just make sure you're on your correct port for your CR10. And basically I'm going to go ahead and verify first, make sure that everything in the code is okay and that we have no problems. Alright, so we're now done uploading. We can go ahead and open up the serial monitor. In the serial monitor, we're going to make sure that we have new line. New line means that we can enter in code right up here and send it to the printer and have the printer do whatever we tell it to do. Right here we set our baud to 115200. This is so we can actually read what's on the screen. And for now I'm going to go ahead and do a G28. This is auto home. Also, I want you guys to check out where the probe goes, because when we level the bed, it's actually leveling the probe. So the probe will be going directly into the center of the bed, and then notice how the first tap is much more quicker than the second tap as well. Second tap's a lot slower, that way it gets a more accurate reading of the bed. Alright, so next what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm going to make sure that the extruder goes right where it auto leveled the probe. So I'm going to go ahead and enter G0, X150, and Y150. And this should put the extruder right where that probe hit. And yes, it did. So perfect. So now our extruder is perfectly leveled or offsetted to the probe. Next, we're going to go ahead and start the level sequence, and we're going to enter in G29 for this. And remember, we're going to be hitting 25 spots on the bed, and it should look like this. So G29, we went ahead and hit that first point at a quicker rate, and then that second head hit actually went a lot slower. Alright, so let's go ahead and speed this up. Alright, so right here I want to do a quick just normal speed real quick so I can show you that the extruder will not go past the glass bed, and that extruder is right on the line. And just notice that there is a little bit of the trunk of the bed that is not actually being leveled. Alright, let's go ahead and finish the leveling, and again 25 points. Alright, so before we can even start a print, we got to remember to redo our Z offset. And I already know my Z offset, so I'm going to go ahead and set it, going through control and then motion. And my Z offset is 0.52 negative, so minus 0.52. Then right here, you're going to hit store settings, and now it's going to be stored onto your printer. And this is why we set the EEPROMs in the Marlin firmware. Alright, so next we're going to go ahead and do a quick print. And what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm doing this circle square. I'll leave a link down below where you can look at it. But I'm just going to go ahead and stretch it out. And just the X and Y and the Z, I'm actually going to make it a lot shorter, so it's only one layer. And now that I'm done scaling it, we're going to go ahead and print it. And I'm doing just a wide print like this just to test the first layer, just because I uploaded a new firmware. I want to make sure everything is good, which it actually turned out perfect. Alright, so this concludes this video, and I hope you guys found it helpful. And if you did find it helpful, please give me a like, and I will leave my version of Marlin down below. And if you guys want to see more videos like this, please subscribe. If you're thinking about getting a CR10, I have links down below. Thank you guys for watching.